Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all around the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have another amazing guest. I'm looking forward to this interview. We have a lot of content to cover. So my guest today is Mohamed El-Masri. He is the managing director at Hodler and the founder and CEO at PermianChain. Mohamed, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Jamil. My pleasure.
You're very welcome. So let's kick things off, and I'll ask you first. I ask everybody this, but I'm really intrigued. What is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Maybe so. So my background from my academic background stems from like a political science um, and economics. So I minored in economics and majored in political science. So I did that for 3 years before kind of finding a new path into investment banking and finance. And so post getting all those prerequisites to get into the industry, um, I was more on the corporate finance, sell side advisory type of work. So, 8 or 9 years later, I ventured into tokenization and real world assets tokenization because it just made perfect sense in corporate finance. When you run private placements or when you structure investment products, you're pretty much securitizing assets. And it was the same concept, just running on more advanced technology. So digitizing the entire corporate finance practice it resonated with me. So yeah, to answer your question, it did make sense as I ventured into blockchain and then landed on Bitcoin mining as I was working more on the energy side. So I looked at the energy market from a corporate finance perspective. I used to get deals on my desk for, private oil and gas plays, whether it may be in the Permian Basin or in Alberta, and more in deregulated and private markets. So as I was working on these energy projects and learned more about challenges that oil and gas companies, upstream oil and gas companies face with their gas, associated gas as they drill further oil or whatnot, I was able, it just resonated with me that there's so much wasted energy in this world. There's so much wasted resources that are not monetized for various reasons, maybe whether it's commercial or geopolitical or whatnot. Um, and it just resonated because I was already entrenched in Bitcoin mining, and it was just a perfect marriage for me. And I've been working on that since 2018, and I've turned really passionate about the intersection between the digital economy and the energy sector.
Interesting, interesting. So I want to find out both, what Hodler and PermianChain are all about, including your vision and your mission.
Yeah. Um, so, I set up Hodler back in maybe 21 to really structure a vehicle or an entity that allows me to consolidate my thoughts, right, and my efforts, because I was all over the place, working on energy, working on Bitcoin mining, working on natural resource tokenization projects, and I realized that there has to be a way to structure all that we're working on with the various partners and people that are involved in the ecosystem that I was a part of, or that I've, was fortunate enough to organically build, to consolidate all this effort and have us all working as one force. So I set up Hodler Investments in Dubai, in order to consolidate the efforts across the various ventures, from energy to decentralized technology to tokenization to Bitcoin mining. So all these projects are now consolidated under Hodler Investments. So Hodler Investments is really a investment corporation that invests in these various sectors that we're right now active in. And really, our slogan is diamond hands for a brighter future. So, we want to hold on to the assets or the projects that we're venturing into, in order to make real impact. So ultimately, it's really all about impact investing and making a difference within the communities that we end up building projects in. Because a lot of these natural resource or a lot of these energy projects or the energy infrastructure projects that we seek to invest in that ultimately are built for the purpose of compute, whether it may be Bitcoin mining, edge AI applications, or whatnot, end up to be in communities, right? Or marginal communities where there's a lot of idle or underutilized energy resources for various reasons. And mainly because there isn't any advanced infrastructure in those areas to bring this resource to market. And there won't be advanced infrastructure in those areas to bring these resource to market because the international community is not necessarily looking at these areas as core areas when it comes for business, right? So hodler investments really has the essence in its word. Hodler comes, from the Bitcoin community where it stood for hold on for dear life, right? So we are pro believers of, or we're probably not maximalists or maxis in the Bitcoin space, but we're pro Bitcoin. We believe in the fact that this is a digital asset that can revolutionize finance in the world of finance. But yeah, that's Hodler's mission, is really to spearhead the investment within the energy infrastructure, Bitcoin mining, edge AI applications, in order to ultimately serve the communities where these remote compute clusters are located.
Got it. Interesting. So I want to get in. I want to get into some of these projects. You had a couple major news announcements though recently, right? So you recently announced plans for a digital energy infrastructure fund,
Yeah.
right? So I'm interested to know how that will work and what will be in your investment mandate and where's that going to serve?
The Digital Energy Infrastructure Fund has been years in the making. It's been something that we had to really hone in on as we got closer to turning this into a serious application. So we are now in final stages of finalizing the establishment of that fund. And, we're looking to establish this fund in Dubai. And we will have parallel funds in different jurisdictions where we have sizable projects. And, this fund is really focused on what it is called, digital energy infrastructure. So we invest in energy infrastructure that ultimately is going to be built to serve compute clusters or compute requirements around the world. We're initially focused on Bitcoin mining as an immediate monetization solution for these energy assets that the fund ultimately invests in. But also alongside the Bitcoin mining applications, we will have AI or edge AI applications or remote AI applications that will be enabled on that infrastructure in order to serve the communities or the town or the local market where these projects are located on the AI as a service type of thing, right? And we're working with a company out of the US called Armada. And they're a very well-backed company that manufactures these edge AI applications, these remote data center applications that are state of the art, really, and they're being applied in the US. But we're now working with them to, implement this application within the projects that the fund will ultimately invest in, or that PermianChain will ultimately be participating in. So the investment strategy is really focused on the entire energy to compute value chain and all of its verticals. And those verticals can fall into software, could fall into, platforms, other digital solutions. So the fund will allocate some of its resources or capital commitments towards investing in startups that or seed, pre-seed, seed or Series A companies that are basically value add to the infrastructure and the data center part of the portfolio.
Got it. There's a lot of opportunities in the verticals.
It's massive. It's incredible what's happening today within the market. We're seeing the narrative mainly from the energy sector has completely evolved and matured from where it was 5 years ago to understand that there could be a direct relationship and a direct marriage between the digital economy and the energy producers around the world. Right now, the power grids around the world cannot sustain the incredible amount of demand from the data center sector, or even from the entire digital economy as it is. It is not going to slow down. We will continue to accelerate technology development. We will continue to accelerate the development of AI, of blockchain, of quantum computing, of all these other types of solutions that would require more and more compute, which ultimately will require more and more energy. And the application of taking these new compute deployments on grid is no longer feasible, not from an economic, commercial, social, or even environmental perspective. So the only solution is, in my perspective, is to go off grid. And to go off grid means you have to go to the source, maybe hydro, solar, gas, whatever the source is. You have to go to the source and build your own infrastructure. And some of the publicly listed companies today that were predominantly Bitcoin mining publicly listed companies, on whether they're on the NASDAQ or the Toronto Stock Exchange or whatnot, some of these companies, and I would say a handful of these companies, have already gotten the idea that they need to own their infrastructure in order to be able to scale and have reliable source of power to maintain their business moving forward. And some of them have done that. They've acquired their own power plants.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. Interesting. Off grid versus grid, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
There's
mean,
challenges. There's challenges of both, right?
of course,
So
there are challenges of both. And the thing is, natural gas is a reliable source of energy. So it is the go-to source for power, for electricity, right? Regardless of how much we hear about the energy transition from fossil fuels to greener renewable sources of energy, that transition is, in my opinion, not practical enough today. It's the correct, it's the proper route, it's the appropriate way forward. But if we want to be realistic, it's not today's solution. It's a long-term, it's a gradual solution. It's a solution that will achieve gradually. So renewable energy is a gradual solution. An immediate solution is natural gas. There's an abundance of natural gas around the world that's flared in the atmosphere that could be captured. And theoretically or hypothetically speaking, the flare gas we have like around 147 billion cubic meters of gas that's being flared annually. And converting that into a monetary sense, it's like $16 billion a year in annual revenue that's just being burnt into the atmosphere. And that's a hypothetical statement because probably you won't be able to capture all of this flare gas and actually make its composition compatible with power generation everywhere, right? So let's just say maybe 30–40% of this gas could be captured and used for power. But ultimately, there's a lot of gas being flared. In addition to that, think around 30%, 40% of the world's proven gas reserves are stranded, right? So, which means there is no economic viability to produce it. So it stays in the ground and they shut in these gas wells, which end up become a liability for the producers that own them. So this is a liability that could be monetized to generate cash flow and ultimately increase net asset value, right? Not in addition to shareholder value, in addition to adding value to the community where these gas wells are located, because then you have also royalties and taxes and government revenues. So it's a circular economy that you can create with energy resources that are stranded, wasted, or idle, or underutilized, and the digital economy that needs all of this power. And some components and some parts of the digital economy, you don't need 100% electricity 24/7, 365. So going off grid is not a major challenge as long as you can maintain 95% runtime on your Bitcoin mining operation, you're feasible, right? So, all of this is there's a lot more I can say about that, but there's a lot of energy in the world, especially on the natural gas side, that could be used to better communities in those areas, especially with modern technology that exists today on the infrastructure side.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Very cool. I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. And so,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
awesome. So I do want to get into another project that you guys are doing though. Recently announced a strategic partnership with GCL Group. And how does that partnership accelerate your mission to build the decentralized distributed energy infrastructure in, I think it's Ethiopia, right?
So we entered into a memorandum of understanding with GCL to build uh, energy infrastructure, distributed energy infrastructure for compute. And that is something that is in motion and that we're working on with the team at GCL. But I'm not at liberty to disclose anything more than what was in the press release. However, it is a very strong partnership that would eventually, after going through the proper channels, have great impact for the country. I believe sincerely. But we need to go through those channels and then be able to start executing on our project.
Got it. And then
In
you
every
met.
country right now, when it comes to this application, especially, energy to power, uh, every country has its own regulatory frameworks, legislative frameworks, and, certain ministries regulate certain sectors. So whether you're in Canada, in Alberta, whether you're in Texas, whether you're in the GCC or any parts of the Middle East and Africa, every country has its own approach to how it regulates energy, how it regulates utilities, how it regulates data centers with the flow of data, which is very sensitive and could be an issue of national security. But now when you say about Bitcoin mining, there are many different departments within every government that want to look at Bitcoin mining as this is our jurisdiction, right? Because if you look at it, Bitcoin mining, the central bank wants to say, the Ministry of Energy wants to say, the Ministry of Communication and Transportation wants to say, because within Bitcoin mining, all those sectors are relevant, right? You cannot do Bitcoin mining without energy. You cannot do Bitcoin mining without telecom and communications. And Bitcoin itself, as a decentralized currency, has eyes on it from central banks all around the world. So you have to go through proper channels in every country where this framework doesn't exist yet. Not talking about Ethiopia specifically, but in countries where frameworks for Bitcoin mining is not yet implemented, there are these challenges. And through Hodler, this is something that we pursue in every country, even though we don't have projects. Every country we have access to, we go and work with the relevant authorities and departments and channels to secure those licenses.
How's your French speaking abilities?
Je parle français très bien.
Okay. Yeah, I asked you that because I about a month ago I went to the UN
Yeah,
to the World the no the World Bank Summit in Washington D.C.
nice.
And there was one event. It was Africa Energy 2030. Okay, the room is packed. I mean, absolutely packed. And you have foreign ministers from 6 African nations in the front of the room, and they say, "Does anybody?" And I'm in the middle of the room. I'm sandwiched in. Does anybody need a hearing, like a translation? Headphones? And I'm like, I don't need that. Then they started speaking, and they spoke in French, and I'm like, I don't understand a word of French. So, I'm like, your solution, and I'm looking at sub-Saharan Africa, how would your solution apply to the countries of sub-Saharan Africa, and how would they be able to get it and be helped, in this 2030 Africa Energy Initiative?
Yeah, see, I won't say this is our solution because um, I wouldn't be doing justice to many of our peers in the industry, right? This is a solution that was developed over time by the industry, and we were just fortunate enough to be part of that growth and apply this early on and pioneer it in our own way. And I see this. However, we adopted on top of this whole thing, the infrastructure side, the platform, PermianChain, where we created a distributed energy market, right? Global distributed energy market for compute, right? And compute means Bitcoin mining, AI, whatever the case may be, that compute that could be remote, compute that could be on the edge, compute that doesn't require 100% 24/7, 365 runtime. So we made a market for this energy that is idle, that is underutilized, that is wasted, that is stranded in a sector that is looking for it, in a sector that needs it. Currently, even though we're not a very large company or platform yet, we have no shortage of demand for power. We work with some of the largest Bitcoin mining companies in the world. We're working with sizable AI end users, whether it's research and development labs, whether it's universities, et cetera, that have a need for this energy source. So imagine that today, if you're a hydro dam that's shut in Tanzania, or whether you're a natural gas site that's a non-core area for some of the large producers, so that site is abandoned in somewhere in Africa or anywhere else in the world, you can't make a market for this gas unless you build the infrastructure. Well, we bring the market to you, right, on site, where you can sell gas, you can sell power, you can sell energy on site, and it'll be consumed where it is being produced. You no longer have to transport this energy through expensive transportation lines that may or may not even be built due to geopolitical reasons. And you'll never be able to monetize this resource, and that community in that area is forever energy poor. So our solution, I strongly believe, over time, as it grows, as it accelerates, as it attracts more volume and more resources, will reduce the spread of energy poverty. And we will be able to build energy infrastructure all over the world to service cloud-based solutions, because my data center could be in the middle of the Amazon and I can still be running my website, right? So that, hosting is a cloud thing, right? My Bitcoin mining container or setup could be anywhere in that is remote, and I'll still receive my Bitcoin to my wallet on my dashboard and track the performance of my computing. So I personally don't need to be there, but I can take the infrastructure there, consume the energy, monetize it, and pay the bill, right? So all of this, to answer your question, we're able to completely revolutionize the way energy infrastructure is built and actually build equitable energy systems for those communities in those areas.
Equitable energy systems. I'm pro that. I like that a lot. So
Great.
yeah. So you have another strategic alliance, right? It was with EHC Investment, right? And you're looking to
Yeah.
integrate data mining systems and support the creation of sovereign digital economies. There are a lot of countries around the world that have sovereign digital economies, and people don't realize it, right?
Yeah.
So how do you help create those sovereign economies, and how do you see that happening at scale and around the world, and giving people those equitable opportunities?
The digital economy itself, basically, how can I say, spearheaded or accelerated or even made it even more and more possible to be at liberty, right? I mean, without the digital economy today, there's not much liberty in this world, right? We're able to create our own companies in seconds. We're able to, generate wealth from, in ways never before possible. right? So the digital economy provides liberty. So, you know, yes, having a digital economy basically strengthens the potential and the possibility of a sovereign economy, right? Of a sovereign country, and or maintaining that sovereignty, right? A lot of these countries don't have the military might to maintain their sovereignty, right? The only way you're able to maintain your sovereignty in the digital economy is if you have the infrastructure to run it. And a lot of these countries, without even naming those countries, natural energy resources are in abundance and they're untapped. And this is right now, we're living in a time where literally, if you build it, they will come. This is the type of market we are in right now, especially in the data center industry, where as a whole, I would say, not just for the subsets of Bitcoin mining and AI, if you have the infrastructure, they will come. Now, the problem with data centers is traditional data centers. They cannot be just anywhere in the world because that there are global and international implications with data, right? What kind of data you're processing, who you're processing from, how are you storing it, cybersecurity. All data is a question of national security all the time, right? So not anyone can build data centers depending in anywhere in the world and depending where they're from, right? There's always issues between, East and West or whatever the case may be. So you have to be careful how you build your data centers and who you serve. But ultimately, countries that have their own data centers for their own purpose to serve their local economies will be able to have data sovereignty because then their data is not stored somewhere in Ohio on an Amazon server, which is not a bad thing, but it is not something that you control. Right? It is not under your jurisdiction. It is in a data center somewhere very far away. And the latency issue could be something that would not be efficient for most of these economies or these countries that might need data with low latency requirements. And that's the thing with edge AI, for example. So you get data center at the edge, where the data is needed and where the data is being produced or generated. And that just makes it faster and quicker to build AI applications, for example. If you have robots and humanoids and arms and robot dogs, they need access to that server or that GPU or that card to process every movement they make constantly, right? So you're better off having that data closer to where this R&D program or this R&D lab is implemented versus having that data inferencing somewhere else in the world. So it all, for me, it all plays a role. Like I have limited understanding with the way data is processed. I have limited understanding with the way traditional data centers work. Most of our work has been on the Bitcoin mining and energy side. But ultimately, I see that there are limitations just by being in discussions with these countries. There are limitations in certain countries for them to build their own data center infrastructures because of global politics. And these countries will be able to build their own infrastructure if it'll be feasible if they had the offtake for it, right? So now you get into a question where, you're tapping into a market and you need to select your off-takers wisely. So there are a lot of things that are better left unsaid, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at it from a retail person perspective, and especially during the Christmas time, how I order from Amazon, it shows up the next day. Their data centers to me are pretty efficient, but they're also far more environmentally harmful than any Bitcoin miner I know.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, the efficiency question is based on, what are you using it for, right? I mean, e-commerce and what's it called shipping and logistics. I guess that's a standard e-commerce part of the standard process of an e-commerce value chain or supply chain. And that won't be a major issue in terms of efficiency of processing data. It's all fairly instant on the internet. But I'm talking as the digital economy becomes more advanced and modern, and AI continues to accelerate, and nothing that we consume in terms of technology is going to be run without AI as we proceed. Even our phones today, they have some AI functionality on them as they make recommendations, suggestions, and etc. and notifications come. But as this happens, these countries that don't have the infrastructure will not be able to advance their economies, and they will continue to fall back decades or years compared to more developed economies where AI infrastructure or data center infrastructure exists because the energy was built to service it.
Got it. So those countries are going to have to end up. Those countries are going to have to end up being a little more innovative, right? So what
They're
are some?
going to have to end up accelerating energy infrastructure development and doing so in a way, because a lot of those countries are set back by their own regulatory frameworks or the lack thereof, right? And a lot of those countries need to be proactive in how they allow foreign investors to come in and build energy infrastructure to service local compute requirements.
Got it. So we're building not only the energy economy, we're also building the creativity economy.
Definitely. You're going to have to, more of the innovation side of things cannot be executed upon if there is no compute to support building.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just wondering, we're going to have Bitcoin data centers and Web3 data centers that are better than the Web2 data centers, or that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing with Web3. It's Web3 as a whole, that I mean, its energy consumption is negligible compared to Bitcoin mining specifically. And Bitcoin mining for me is really the infrastructure you're building to serve the future of money, right? Or the future of money that is going to be a bridge between fiat government-backed currency and the digital economy that will, as we progress, I see users of the digital economy, which is ultimately a large percentage of the world, will continue to prefer instantaneous digital currency that is decentralized. And as Bitcoin becomes less of a store of value and more of what it was built for, a P2P transaction system, this software called Bitcoin, which is actually a payment system software, will end up requiring all of this infrastructure to maintain its integrity, legitimacy, and security. And that's, I think, what the Bitcoin mining companies are building all over the world is to support the network, to support the infrastructure, so that in the future we have the infrastructure there to maintain the integrity and the security of the network. That's really all it is. Because as time goes by and mining continues to accelerate, the Bitcoin, the profitability of Bitcoin mining will more and more depend on transaction fees versus what are currently today called block rewards.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our future. So very cool. So I want to thank you. I could probably talk to you for in detail for hours, but
Yeah,
let's
my pleasure. Anytime.
yeah. So you're welcome. So let's have one more question. And it's easy.
Sure.
How can people find out more information about you, about your companies, about what you do, what you're up to? How can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the best way to find out about what we're up to is to visit our website, hodlerinvest.com. And I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, or passively active, but everything is fairly updated. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Jimmy. My pleasure.